It's a football Friday right here on Philadelphia Eagles Now. Chase Senior here with you. And as always, thank you so much for supporting the channel. And no matter where you are, how you're tuned in, I appreciate all of you for making today's show a part of your day. We have some blockbuster Philadelphia Eagles news to talk about because Eagles rumors are hot on the streets in the lead up to NFL free agency. You've got all this A.J. Brown trade buzz, but that's not what we're talking about today. Could Howie, Roseman, and the Eagles really trade away all-pro defensive tackle Jaylen Carter to the Las Vegas Raiders in order to land Maxx Crosby? Before we get into all of that, a programming reminder. Free agency gets underway on Monday. Going to be live all next week right here on the channel. And anytime there is breaking news around the Birds, whether it's a trade, a signing, anytime there's buzz or a big story to discuss like this one right here, I always have you covered. So don't forget to hit that subscribe button as we're closing in on nearly 150,000 subscribers. And as you can see right behind me, Daisy is hanging out and she's listening to the show and watching the show as well because she loves her Eagles coverage. All right, let's begin here. So this tweet came from Pretty Ricky, Slick Rick on X, everybody's favorite dog on Twitter. And if you're not familiar with Slick Rick, Pretty Ricky, he has a track record of being right with some of his NFL scoops. And it's funny because sometimes he will just appear during stretches like this leading into free agency, during free agency, in the lead up to or during the NFL draft, as we approach the NFL trade deadline. And he'll have some of these scoops. He'll have some of these reports. He'll pass along some of these juicy rumors. And so often he has been right. And he's been well ahead of some of the top NFL insiders with some of these scoops and some of these reports. And a lot of times what he has reported has ended up ringing true and it's ended up happening. So I put some stock into what Pretty Ricky is saying. And what's also hilarious is that he'll activate his Twitter, which is closing in on nearly 100,000 followers. He'll make some of these reports and he'll drop some of these banger tweets and then he'll just disappear into the ether. And then us here at Chat Sports, we'll throw out the bat signal and we'll say, Pretty Ricky, we need you. Do you have any inside intel? Do you have any inside information? And then he'll come out of nowhere and drop the hammer on some of these stories and reports. And so he tweeted this out a little bit earlier today. And it caught my attention. It's gone viral. I did a video on this, and now it's just taken off on social media. Barking rumor. And for whatever reason, he's always a dog as far as his profile picture and his avatar. That's why I called him everybody's favorite dog on X. I'm hearing that the Eagles have made Jaylen Carter available in their pursuit for Raiders defensive end Max Crosby. Are you ready to let the dogs out? Hashtag fly Eagles fly. Hashtag Raider Nation. Now, before Pretty Ricky put this tweet out, there were some rumblings on Eagles Twitter last night and today that Jaylen Carter potentially could be had in a trade. When some of those tweets were being sent and some of the conversations were being started, we didn't know who Jaylen Carter would be dealt for potentially. But according to Ricky Scoops, Pretty Ricky, Jaylen Carter would be involved in a trade to land the Eagles' Max Crosby. Of course, there's a lot to talk about on this front, right? And let me begin by just passing along a couple of thoughts. If any team across the NFL, in this case, the Eagles, wants an elite player, and Max Crosby is an elite player, you either have to give up premium draft capital. The asking price for the Raiders has been 2 first-round picks. Or if you want to land an elite player, you might have to give up an elite player. And from Howie Roseman's standpoint, if he loves Max Crosby, in order to get Max Crosby in an Eagles uniform, instead of giving up 2 first-round picks, could the Eagles part ways with Jaylen Carter and maybe an additional draft pick in order to land one of the top defensive players in football? Now, I have said here on the show, I'd be a little bit worried about trading for Max Crosby. He's going to be 29 years old in 2026. He has ended each of the last 3 years being injured. He's coming off a meniscus repair, which throws a little bit of a wrench into these trade conversations. And he's not an athletic Adonis, an athletic specimen like Myles Garrett, who can win with twitch, bend, size, speed, athleticism, and being just an overall physical freak. Maxx Crosby wins because of his effort, because of his hustle, because he has a great arsenal of pass rush moves in order to get to the quarterback. And I'm not sure how his game ages. Now, is he one of the top pass rushers in the game? No doubt about it. On top of that, he's also one of the best run defenders in football. But there are definitely some risks here with his cap hit also being north of $30 million on top of the injuries and on top of the age and on top of what a team, or in this case, the Eagles, would have to give up. But from the Eagles standpoint, and from the Raiders standpoint too, right? Jaylen Carter is contract extension eligible. So do the Eagles want to pay Jaylen Carter $30+ million per year, or would they rather have Maxx Crosby at around that same price tag and cap hit? On the pecking order of what's most important for a football team: quarterback, offensive tackle, pass rusher. Defensive tackle is right behind that, but along the defensive line, what's more important, to have an edge or a defensive tackle? I would say edge rusher is the more vital position, but I think finding an elite defensive tackle who's as disruptive and as game-changing as Jaylen Carter can actually be harder to find than finding a pass rusher. So there's that as well. The Eagles, though, from their standpoint, might look at their roster right now and say, we have 2 pass rushers under contract for 2026, Nolan Smith and Jalen Carter. We need another edge rusher on this team. On top of the positional importance, the Eagles also have 2 defensive tackles who they really like. Jordan Davis, who played at an all-pro level last year, who they also value as a leader on the field and in the locker room. He's become a pillar of this organization. And Moro Ojomo, who, as I predicted, would have a better 2025 than Milton Williams had in 2024. And Milton Williams is the second highest paid defensive tackle in football at $26 million per year, behind Chris Jones, who's at like 31.75. If the Eagles wanted to give an extension to Jordan Davis and Moro Ojomo, both of those players would probably right now be in the range of $15 to $20 million per year, whereas Jaylen Carter might demand around $30+ million per year, especially if he didn't sign a contract extension prior to this upcoming season and then balled out and had another all-pro season in 2026. Then him and Drew Rosenhaus, that's his agent, that's also important in all of this, could make the argument he should overtake Chris Jones as the highest paid interior defensive lineman in NFL history. And I think there is an argument to be had that the Eagles could build around Jordan Davis, Moro Ojomo. They like Byron Young, who's affordable, and you also have Ty Robinson on the roster. Jaylen Carter also isn't the best run defender, but I think the thing with Jaylen Carter, he was an all-pro in 2024, and that was deserved, but his numbers weren't gaudy. Jaylen Carter's impact goes far beyond the box score. He makes everybody along that defensive line better. He opens up opportunities for Jordan Davis, Moro Ojomo, Jaylen Carter, and Nolan Smith without him necessarily having to register a statistic on the box score. And he is one of the few players in the NFL who, by his lonesome, can take over a game. I also think it's really important along the defensive line to have guys who are a little bit psycho, who are dogs, who want to beat up and annihilate the offensive line in front of them and then crush the opposing quarterback. So this would definitely be risky for the Eagles. And I would kind of value Jaylen Carter more on the Eagles than Maxx Crosby on the Eagles if I were to pick one player to have in an Eagles uniform in 2026 and beyond. On top of that, though, again, I try to see all types of different perspectives with something like this. The Eagles might be worried about Jaylen Carter's bilateral shoulder issues that he suffered from last year. the fact that in 2024, he led all defensive tackles in snaps, and his workload when he was on the field this past year was also very high, on top of some of the past character stuff, because that has been there. Now, with the Eagles, he's been respected. His teammates really like him, but there was the incident at Georgia. There was some chatter about him, like, stealing stuff from a store a couple of years ago after he got drafted by the Eagles. I don't know if that was ever proven true, but then he spit on the chest of Dak Prescott, and that wasn't a great look, obviously, either, right? But again, along the defensive line, when you're talking about dogs, sometimes you need guys like Jaylen Carter to make a statement, because he can really put his imprint on the game. What's also notable here, remember what Micah Parsons had said, that Howie Roseman is very close to trading for Micah prior to the 2025 season, and that Jaylen Carter was one of the trade pieces that Howie Roseman dangled in that deal with the Dallas Cowboys? If that's true, and I know that Micah Parsons has had some out-of-pocket stuff before, Howie Roseman is no stranger to dealing away really good players, but also including Jaylen Carter in some of these trade conversations. Howie Roseman and John Spytek also have a working relationship. John Spytek was an intern and a scout in the same front office as Howie Roseman when he was starting his NFL career in the front office. And they made a trade last year, that Thomas Booker for Jacorian Bennett swap prior to the season. So they have made moves before. And when I was at the NFL Combine, Spytek was asked by, I believe, Zach Berman about Howie Roseman, and he said, you got to be careful when you're doing these trades with Howie because he's so good at what he does. But Spytek also went on to say that Howie did a lot for him in his own career, and he learned a lot in working alongside Howie. And one of the big reasons why we see these uber aggressive GMs and all of this movement and all of these trades, it's because of Howie Roseman. John Middlecoff talked about this on the show. Pleasure to sit down with him at the NFL Combine, but we've seen a switch. When I was growing up, like, there weren't a lot of NFL trades. Now there are a bunch of NFL trades because Howie Roseman kind of started all of that. So I would not trade Jaylen Carter for Maxx Crosby, but for those reasons that I mentioned, like, Howie could be looking at this from a bird's eye view, no pun intended, and he could be looking at some of the pluses and some of the minuses, and he could come to a decision that makes sense for the Eagles on why to trade Jaylen Carter for Maxx Crosby. And if he does, it would be a fascinating move for both Philadelphia and Las Vegas. From Las Vegas's standpoint, they're trying to rebuild their organization. Would they rather rebuild with an expensive defensive end who's going to be 29 years old, or a defensive tackle who is extension eligible, who they can sign to a long-term deal, who's going to be 25 years old in April, who can really help them turn around their defense, which has not been good in years prior? Jaylen Carter living in Las Vegas, I would have some concerns there. But if he can keep his head on straight, which has been the case since the Eagles drafted him and moved up to take him number 9 out of Georgia, he can be and has been one of the most disruptive forces in the National Football League. And so for those Eagles fans who want Maxx Crosby, in order to get an elite player, you might have to give up an elite player as well. Whatever ends up happening, I'll be talking about it right here on Philadelphia Eagles Now. Keep it locked here. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button. A lot of rumors going into NFL free agency. We've already seen 4 trades happen in the NFL this week. Today, a lot more movement with players getting released, some stars, some really good players, and it's only going to continue to heat up. Thanks for watching the show. Don't forget to give me a follow as well on social media, X, Instagram, TikTok, at Chase_Senior. And I will catch you all soon. Earlier today, I published a video, my perfect free agency plan. Be sure to check that out as well, so we keep the content humming.